The disciples did question him about the end times, and Christ doesn't answer the first question in Mark, but he answers the second one this way. He tells them to be on guard and to watch out for false prophets and people that come in his name. When he's talking about the end times. And then he tells us to watch out for that there will be earthquakes and wars and rumors of wars, and famines and pestilences and plagues. And we see all those things today. We just look around. I mean, there's famines, there's wars going on, there's plagues all over the place. We just came through the pandemic in 2020. I think I heard today that over in Congo or somewhere that the Ebola outbreak is running wild over there, and there's just things going on all over the world. We've had several earthquakes. This stuff has been constant since Christ went into heaven. He said these are just the beginning of the sorrows. And then he warned his disciples about persecution that will come to them for his name's sake. And he talked about how brother will turn against brother and family members will turn against each other because of the name of Christ. And then he spoke about the abomination of desolation that would come, and we spoke about that some last Wednesday. And then he went into the Great Tribulation, and he talked about how horrible the Great Tribulation is going to be and how it's just going to be a horrible time when that time comes. And we spoke about that also last Wednesday. So we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're coming out of the Great Tribulation, and we're going to talk about the coming of Christ, or the second coming of Christ. So we're going to pick up in verse 24. But in those days after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send his angels and gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest part of the earth to the farthest part of heaven. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see these things happening, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Take heed, watch, and pray, for you do not know when the time is. It is like a man going to a far country, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to each his work, and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening, at midnight, at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all, watch. So that's where we're going to look into these verses this evening. So again, he says in those days after the tribulation is how he starts off this next section. Those days he's talking about obviously is the tribulation. This is when all these problems are happening on the earth. Well, he says that in those days, the coming of Christ, there is going to be a cosmic event that happens. And this is going to be connected toward the tribulation. He says that when Christ comes back, he says the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars of heaven will fall. Then he goes on to describe how he'll be coming in the clouds with great power and glory. So this event is going to happen. And some people are skeptical about, well, are these things really going to happen? Is the moon really going to be darkened? Or is the stars going to fall from heaven? Well, I think that really is what's going to happen. There's several places in the Old Testament that speaks of this type of thing. And I'm only going to give you three this evening. But over in Isaiah chapter 13, verses 9 through 11, it says this: Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with both wrath and fierce anger,
to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will halt the arrogance of the proud, and I will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Then over in Joel chapter 2, verses 30 through 31, it says this, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And then in Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 14 through 15, it says, the great day of the Lord is near. It is near and hastens quickly. The noise of the day of the Lord is bitter. There the mighty men shall cry out. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of devastation and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. So he paints this awesome event that's going to happen, and that's going to happen when Christ comes back. There are parts of the Bible that says he comes back with a shout and the cry of an archangel, and it's like a loud trumpet that comes, and he's going to come again, and all these things are going to happen. And I appreciate verses like Isaiah that says, you know what, he's going to halt the arrogance of the proud, and he's going to lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. He's going to make things right when he comes back, when the moon is darkened, when the stars shake, and he comes back with power and glory. And thank God that that day is going to come one day. But not only that, he's going to send his angels, and his angels are going to come, and they're going to gather together his elect. This is when Christ comes after the tribulation. He gathers them from all over the world, those who were saved during the tribulation and have survived. So we see this awesome event in the heavens happen, then we see Christ coming with the angels with him. So that's a description of his coming after the tribulation. And then he goes on in verse 28 through 31, he gives them a practical example of this. He says, now learn the parable from the fig tree. Now the fig tree had a regular pattern. The leaves would appear, and then summer would follow. When you saw the leaves coming on the fig tree, you know, hey, summer is near. And it's the same way when we see these events that the Scripture talks about getting more and more frequent. Christ says, hey, it's almost time. It's near, and I'm right at the doors. And I think right now, in the life that we live, most certainly we are closer than we ever were to Christ coming back. And I believe he's right at the door. And he's going to come again. He goes on to say, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Now, some people take this literally, but he wasn't talking about that specific generation because obviously these things haven't happened yet. Most people believe when he talks about this generation, he's talking about the Jewish race or those race of people that were there. They're not going to perish from this earth before these events happen. The Jews are very much a part of end times, and they are still here. So that time is going to come. And Christ reminds us, he says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. This is God in the flesh saying, you know, you can be skeptical if you would like. You can ignore my word, but I can assure you that these things are going to happen. And just because they haven't already happened, just because we haven't seen the skies split and Christ come, it's going to happen. Christ is coming again. And then he goes finally toward the end of the chapter. He reminds the disciples, he says, that day or hour no one knows. No one knows the day or the hour that Christ is going to come back. And because of this, he told us earlier, take heed. Take heed, be on guard, because no one knows. He goes on to say, nor the Son, but only the Father. This doesn't mean that God or Jesus Christ didn't know, but he chose to humble himself before God the Father and not know when that time was to come. He voluntarily submitted to God to allow God to know that time, God the Father. But he tells us because of that, take heed, watch, be on guard. So each one of us, like we said last week, we should live every day of our lives that, hey, today could be the day that I meet God. Today could be the day that God comes back. And as we've heard before, whether or not Christ comes back and gathers us or not, we all are terminal. We've heard that before from the pulpit. We've all got an expiration date. And one day, we're going to meet God. And I think these lives that we live in the hustle and bustle, and I'm guilty of this at times, I'm so caught up in life that, that's at the back of my mind. But we need to take it from the back of our mind and put it to the front of our mind and say, hey, I might meet God today. And I guess, are you ready to meet God? That's a question each one of us should ask. Are you ready to meet him? So again, no one knows the day or the hour. No one knows what time it's going to happen. And then he goes on to give them this example of a master that goes off. And he goes on this trip and he gives his servants charge of the house to look after the house. And he says, hey, one day I'm coming back. But they don't know. And he says, for us, because we don't know, we need to take heed and we need to pray. We need to stay on guard and stay on watch because we don't know when God is coming back. And you don't want to get caught sleeping. Cops are famous for that. They'll take a nap on the side of the road and sometimes you get caught. And you don't want to get caught. But it's the same for us. We don't want to get caught unaware, unknown when Christ comes back. So one day he's going to come back. One day he's coming back and he's going to not just stand at the door, but he's going to step through it. And all of us, and each one of us, he says at the beginning, and my Bible has an exclamation point. It says, watch, watch. Look forward to God coming back because he's coming back. So Jesus left us in charge of a few things before his coming back. He entrusted us with his house. That's the church. He entrusted us with his authority. He gave his servants the authority in that story and the responsibility of that authority. Each one of us have the authority to share the gospel with others. And we have his work to do while we're waiting on him. So are you living your life sleeping? Have you forgotten that Christ is coming back? Or are you working for him? Are you expecting him to come back at any minute? Because one day he will. And we're going to end there this evening in Mark chapter 13. And hopefully the next time we're here, we'll go to the next chapter. And Mark chapter 14 is a very lengthy chapter, and we'll probably spend a couple Wednesdays on that because there's no way I can get all that in one night. But we're going to take a few minutes this evening, and we're going to go to the Lord.